Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today is Saturday, August the 26th, 2023, and I want to talk about this 7-day vegan challenge that I've been embracing. On this past Thursday, I weighed 245 pounds, 245.2 actually, 245.2 pounds, and just 4 days later, here on Saturday, I weigh 239.6 pounds. So that is a decrease of over 5 pounds. So I haven't made it all the way through the 7-day period of time yet. I know that my weight loss from yesterday to today was 3.8 pounds, just from yesterday to today. And I know that that's a little bit unusual. So I don't know exactly how much I'll lose or where I'll be at, if I'll even have lost any weight by the end of this 7-day vegan challenge. But I do know that I expect to have lost some weight by the end of this 7-day vegan challenge. What I also know is that I definitely have recovered quite a bit of health in general. For anyone who knows or who has watched this journey in the past, especially if you've been watching this channel recently, you'll know that I struggled not too long ago with some extreme pain, some head pressure, almost like migraines. And those incidents, in at least 2 cases, pretty much knocked me out of commission to where I only could stay in bed. I could only sleep to offset the pain. Those bouts of pain were interesting because I would fall asleep and then of course I would dream, or if I was dreaming, I don't really remember. I'm sure I was though, because the moment that I began to wake up, I suddenly was faced with that constant excruciating pain that I had pretty much somehow overcome just by sleeping. Since I was sleeping on that first day, just a few days ago, when I had this extreme difficulty, I basically didn't eat for that whole day. And I was so in pain that eating caused me nausea. I couldn't even drink water. So on that first day where I was forcibly put out of commission from having any kind of fun meals or anything like that, I made a decision, and I took it as a sign that I needed to change some of the things that I was doing. And so on that first evening, after over 24 hours of not being able to eat or drink water, I was able to keep down a few fresh cherries and drink a little bit of water. And on the second day, I was able to eat some watermelon, and I basically kept it as simple as possible for that day. And then here we are on the 4th day. Yesterday was the 3rd day. I had a cauliflower bake for dinner for 2 nights, yesterday and the night before. And the cauliflower bake consisted of cauliflower, tomatoes, and olive oil. And that basically was all baked together to create a wonderfully filling meal that also wasn't overly processed or anything like that. And so today itself, I've had cherries, some watermelon, some raspberries, some blueberries, and some water. And that's basically what I've had so far. So I don't know what I'm going to do for the next few days. I know that I'm going to incorporate some different options. But basically, for this 4-day period of time, the main thing that I have done, I went for a 2-mile run on one day, and then yesterday I walked 4 miles, and that's really about it. You know, I haven't really done anything extreme. Today I did some yard work, did a lot of yard work in the back, trying to tend to the area that basically we're using to help the animals that are passing through. Put out some water, trimmed back some vegetation that's gone a little bit wild, and so forth. So I haven't done anything other than change my diet. So I want to reiterate that in the not too distant past, somebody asked me or told me more along the lines of telling me that if we were told that we were going to die from eating the things that we were eating, what are the odds, that we would actually change anything that we were doing? So not too long ago, I lost a family member. I'll call them a family member, even though by association, the family member that I'm relating to is related to someone who said that I wasn't in their family. But anyway, we had a family member who shunned any kind of plant-based diet. They would say stuff like, "I'm not a rabbit. I'm not going to eat rabbit food." And in the long run, they ended up passing away before their time, which is unfortunate, because this person has children and grandchildren. And in the same manner, not too long ago, I lost a cousin younger than myself due to heart disease. But he was also on dialysis and had part of his foot amputated due to poor circulation. And that amputation, of course, started to have issues, just like anyone who's had amputations who has not changed their ways. There are certain things that we ourselves are doing that are simply out of control. But they're not out of our own control if we decide to overcome the addictive tendencies. So a lot of people think of addiction when it comes to alcohol, drugs, any kind of substance abuse, but not too many people think of addiction when it comes to basic food. We might look at certain people, and depending on how our egos work, we might judge from afar someone who doesn't look the way we think they should look. And we might say, that person's for sure got an addiction, of some sort or the other. But we don't often look at ourselves when it comes to eating and the things that we can change as being addicts ourselves. Now, how do we recognize whether we're addicted to food? The first thing to do is to think of whether we can go without it or not. In the old ways, there were periods of time called Lent, for an example, when we would do something called fasting, which if you were in the Catholic religion, like I was, then you would basically go without meat during the weekends for the period of Easter, for that time frame, Lent, up until Easter. And I don't know exactly how many days it is. I have to look every year on the calendar. It's probably like 40 days or something weird. I really don't know, honestly. I have to look. I was dropped on my head purposefully by my father. And there are a lot of things that kind of befuddle me. And it's kind of funny because there are a lot of things that come quite easily to me. So the way that I was dropped, I've only got to give thanks for it. So what that I can't remember all the numbers? That's why we can look them up right now. And even if I couldn't, the purpose of this conversation is to talk about, can we go without something even for a period of time, even for a weekend? Can we go without smoking for the weekend? Can we go without drinking for the weekend? Can we go without thinking that someone is out to get us for the weekend? And I say that because there are so many people that I've had conversations with recently, and for whatever reason, only some of the conversations have been reciprocated. The other ones were shorted. People unsubscribed from this channel because I reached out. And in some cases, I was just reaching out to say, happy birthday or something like that. And for whatever reason, the conversation turned to something a little bit deeper than the average conversation we would want to have. And people can get upset by that. My own father told me that people would get upset if we talked about food things in the Bible, stuff like that. And I never really thought about it until one day when he really got mad, when I was talking to him about a bit of information that I learned in Corinthians having to do with dreams. He got so mad that he did some things that were almost supernatural. So I'm going in a lot of directions here. I know some people think I'm rambling, and some people say, you must like to hear yourself talk. I really don't like to hear myself talk. I like to hear other people talk. I like to learn information from other people. I would love to learn information from my own family. In my own family, we have suffered a circumstance that has to do with, the only thing I can call it is division. And division is a destructive way of separating any kind of unity that we might be able to use for the purpose of bettering all of our situation. The more individualistic lifestyles that we live, the less likely it is that we're going to help one another in any manner whatsoever. Somebody can make all the money in the world, become the leader, and still not want to help anybody. They'll just make this face, make this face. I can't even make it because I want to laugh. They'll just make this face that kind of says more about the story than anything else does. If you've ever watched children playing on the playground and seen, I've been a child playing on the playground, so I know what it's like. If you've ever seen toddlers playing or learning, or even adults working on a team project, have you ever worked on one of those things where you had to build something out of materials and make it as tall as you could, and whoever made the tallest item would, win or whatever? All of these things, all of these aspects about play and joy are so much different than the egocentric competitions that we have tended to follow because of the teachings of our fathers. I was watching yesterday something that led to something else that led to something else, and I saw that there was a video about Michael Jackson and Prince and how there was competition between them, although there really wasn't any competition between them. The competition only had to do with superstardom and people that wanted to achieve those stratuses, those echelons of fame and fortune, I guess. And so there was competition. And in that competition were circumstances where basically you would have self-sabotage because of egocentric decisions. Now, both of these people are deceased, and so I'm not trying to talk about them behind their back or anything like that. I'm just mentioning that in some cases there's a lot more to the story, and much of that has to do with what we think other people think. If we don't care what other people think, as a toddler, as a student as a child on the playground, as an adult in a team building exercise, as whoever I am, if we're not thinking about our egocentric, self-centered ways of achieving something in terms of how someone else will see what we're doing, then the only thing we're left to think about is, why are we doing something? And if you watch people playing on a playground who are really playing and not trying to sabotage or bully one another, you'll see there's a level of interest, a level of fun and joy. And those type of things are impossible to replicate. Just the same way that face is very difficult to replicate. It's difficult to replicate unless you can really feel that disgust. All of us can feel it. You can see it. You can see when I try to force it, it comes, but that is the dangerous, slippery slope that we tend to forget about when we're too busy feeding the dark side. So what if we're eating a lot of food that's filled with hormones what if we're eating a lot of food that has fear-based hormones in it because it's being raised in a way where it knows, that eventually it's going to be slaughtered? What if you're in a big giant pen and you see what's happening? Imagine smelling all of those different smells and being around all of that different stuff and then being slaughtered. And then imagine all of you being served up for someone else to eat. Now that person going about their day, eating whatever they want to eat, might not be thinking about you when they eat you. They might simply be thinking, this is tasty. This is affordable. This is advertised by someone I regard highly. Whatever it is we're thinking about, these things are things that were learned based on a system that our fathers presented to us, gifted to us. How can we better these gifts if not to try to return them in better condition that they were given to us? And how can we better anything if we can hardly better ourselves? If we're addicted to something, the last thing we're going to do is take time to address that addiction. And so we might continue to short all the time that we could have allocated to doing anything else, including cleaning up our own area around us. Now, I have what's a good word? There are no illusions as to who might be watching these channels. People just like you and I. And me, when I watch these channels, I watch with an inquisitive mind. Like I want to learn something. I want to be inspired. I want to feel joy. And so I do everything I can to seek that out. And as I seek that out, I've found a lot of opportunity in the world to satisfy these cravings. And some of these things can be addictive depending on what it is that we choose to consume, that we choose to engage in. So again, I know I might sound like I'm rambling and beating around the bush and what have you, but the truth is that there is somebody in this group who is listening right now who could help me out if only they could help themselves out. And so I've done everything I can to continue to help myself, including learning to sleep again. Sometimes we have to relearn certain things. Yesterday, I actually did a lizard crawl. I basically was walking on all fours. And I was doing that because I saw a video about mobility and the training that it takes to get your mobility back. And these are things that some of us take for granted. My own grandfather was able to walk on his hands. And this is just a story that I've heard from someone who was witnessing that. I never got a chance to see that because my grandfather passed away before I was born. So these are things that some people were not naturally able to do. They did it because they were able to practice doing those things and to continue practice doing those things even as an adult. And when I say even as an adult, what I mean is my grandfather must have been extremely childlike, joyful, creative, happy. And maybe he had a lot of difficult work to do, expenses, chores to tend to, on and on at the same time. But somehow he maintained composure enough to walk on his hands. So these are things that, as I talk about them, it makes me think in so many directions, especially about words and how as children, we wouldn't get offended if someone said a word like yoga or exercise. Someone might even equate yoga to walking on our hands. It's different. It's difficult. It's challenging. And so I mentioned this word situation because some of the words I must be saying, some of the words I'm saying must be offending many people. Some of the variations of the thought that I have must be so different that they make people mad. And the only thing I can think is, I wish that if that were the case, someone would actually tell me outright. My father would tell me outright certain things, but he wouldn't tell me outright all of the things that were on his mind. He would just snap. And he threw me headfirst into a tub one time when I wet myself as a toddler, as a child. He threw me headfirst into the tub. I blacked out. When I woke up, it hurt. It hurt really bad. My head hurt really bad. I probably didn't want to eat right then, just like the other day when my head hurt really bad. These are thoughts. I forgive. I didn't forget. And I certainly wouldn't want other people to feel hurt like I felt. With all of that in mind, yesterday I walked at Guadalupe River State Park. The water was low. The river smelled because it was stagnant. And I'm not going to forget. I'm not going to forget that I smelled those same smells as the river became lower and lower at Big Bend at Santa Elena Canyon. I'm not going to forget that these all are intertwined conversations having to do with food, with resources. I'm not going to forget that I talked several years ago about solar panels and how that would help not just ourselves, but other people. I'm not going to forget how I've talked about how for the past 2 years, the summer bill has been about $100 a month because of the solar panels we have. The choices that we make are either beneficial to everybody, and then those benefits to everyone also happen to reward ourselves, or they're detrimental to many people, or at least other people or other beings. So what if things that we're doing food-wise are detrimental all the way across the board? In some cases, I'm very discouraged to have heard a lot of people saying, I went plant-based because of the things you said. I buy all this, the Beyond Burger, or, I'm just trying to make up something that's not the actual brand name. And that's great. But what if all of those things that are being produced are still being packaged by enterprises that maybe wouldn't hesitate to just disregard you, to consider you just a number? What if the energy going into those beyond plant concoctions is not the best energy? So you get basically to a point where you're like, well, Ray, the only way that you can possibly live based on what you're saying is to only eat whatever you grow yourself, to only live wherever you built yourself. Well, today, guess what? I had a fig off of my fig tree that I've nurtured, that I've talked about. I've got 2 fig trees here. I've got 2 lemon trees. I've got a nectarine tree. And they're all still growing despite these intensely extreme hot conditions, but just barely in some cases. And we are supposedly going to have another challenging winter. If this is true, it's possible that maybe even I will not be able to grow anything going forward. I still have tomatoes on the vine. They're real small, and there's only one vine actually that's producing tomatoes anymore. And so in these extreme conditions, as all of this stuff is showing me a future where I might not even be able to produce my own, to nurture my own plants. As I'm seeing that, I start to wonder, am I even necessary in this equation? Maybe I'm not. Maybe I've overstayed my own welcome. I used to have I don't remember what their title was, a director. Let's call him a director. But the director, I remember, told us a story about how the cost analysis showed that we were over budget. He suggested in his position, maybe you need to let me go because I feel like I'm taking too much of the resources here. That was a brave statement that he supposedly made. He was telling us the story. I don't know if he really did this or not, but I believe him. If you take me out of the equation, would that help anybody? If it would, then I'm ready, I'm ready to give up my place in line. There are a lot of things that I've not deserved that I've been able to enjoy. There are a lot of feasts that I've been able to participate in. There are a lot of holidays and ritualistic, routine days that we all have celebrated together that we may not have participated in. Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, it goes on and on. Christmas. Christmas is one of the worst because most of us don't even participate in talking about the Christ. We don't hardly give pause. We don't hardly take a break. We don't hardly think during Easter that it has nothing to do with little died chickens, baby chickens. We don't take any time to think it has nothing to do with milk bunnies with ears, milk chocolate bunnies. We don't hardly ever think about these things because we haven't been taught this way by our fathers. We've basically continued along this journey without recognizing whether we need to put the feeding utensils down and do some actual work to get to whatever it is we want to get to. We don't need to get another shot. We don't need to get another pill. We don't need to do anything except for to get up, be childlike, and try to help one another and enjoy the playtime that we have on this playground together. I hope that all makes sense. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.